Yes, for All right. Well, this will be this. This will be our warning. We'll get started in just a second. If anybody has a direct connect to the Georgia Building Authority, I would advise them to use that now and tell them to lower the temperature in this room, because we haven't even had anything exciting going yet, and I'm already uncomfortable. But yeah, if we can start settling down, we'll get started here. Try to keep us on time. Yeah. Whip Park is not a happy man when he's when the temperature is too hot, right? Whip Park, you're too hot. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'll call the this meeting of the House Higher Education meeting to order, and we do have a quorum present. We have two items on the agenda this afternoon, HB 56 and HB 172. Members will recall we've seen these or similar measures previously that didn't clear final passage, and so we're going to invite the authors back to tell us about their propositions today. And in that order, we'll go first to House Bill 56. Chairman Petrie, if you want to come up. And I'm going to let you settle in and then ask you if you concur with me. We're working off the original bill, LC 394449. Is that what you have? You don't have a sub, basically. That's the bill is entered. Read that again, Mr. Chairman. Okay, it's LC 394449. That is the original bill for House Bill 56. Is that what you have?
Yes. That's correct. That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and thank you for hearing this bill again. Y'all heard this bill last year, voted it out of this committee. It passed the House. It went to the Senate. It passed committee there, and it passed rules and was waiting in the Senate to be passed when they simply didn't get time to get to it. It was favorably received there. Interestingly enough, Mr. Chairman, this bill was HB 56 last year, and it's HB 56 this year. That's pretty good, huh? How about that? All right. So anyway, very simply, this measure relates to the Georgia Public Safety Memorial Grant. We have a grant that is available to the children of, as you see here, I think y'all should have before you a document that kind of explains, I hope we got that to you, that explains some information about this grant, but it's law enforcement officers, firefighters, and emergency technicians, paramedics, prison guards, so that are killed in the line of duty. Okay, we provide free tuition for their children in our Georgia university system and TCSG as well. This measure very simply seeks to add the spouses of those individuals to eligibility, so that when we have a remaining spouse of someone who has lost their lives in the line of duty, that we allow them to better advance themselves to support their family going forward. That's really very simply what it does, Mr. Chairman. As y'all heard last year, I will tell you some more recent data though. Last year in 2024, 43 students received this grant for a total of $658,902. And I do want you to be aware that currently there are $3.8 million in reserves for this program. And so I think that's important that you know. There were questions last year in this committee that, since there may be new people here, I'll kind of anticipate some of those questions and answer them for you. This is for any eligible school that includes private universities that would be eligible. It is for both graduate and undergraduate programs, both of those, and right now only for full-time students. And those were some of the questions that I had noted from last year's committee meeting. That's very simply the measure, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Chairman Petrie, we don't have the document that explains the grant program. Did you get that to our office?
Well, I understood that it was, but that's my failure.
Okay, no, I just wanted you
to.
That's fine. We'll get that. We'll get that taken care of. Not a problem. I just want, as you're talking to it, the members don't have that, but we'll get it. Let me ask. You do have a question, if you'll take one. I remember last year, one of the things we discussed was for a spouse. I remember the discussion, and we may have landed on it, so correct me. It's been about a year. But I remember there was some discussion about, in the case of a spouse, maybe they couldn't be a full-time student because they had a family, and did we want to allow for it? Can you remind me where we landed? Because I believe you just said you have to be a full-time student now. So we're back to that, and
that's correct.
Please talk to that.
It was discussed, but it was not changed in any way. So, but we certainly have I certainly would welcome I understand that concern and recognize that dealing with an adult, especially a remaining spouse that has children, that may be an improvement to the measure.
Okay, I just couldn't remember how we landed on that last year, but we did move it forward without, maybe we discussed it. I know it was kind of late in the year when we were doing it, and we might have been discussing. Okay, well, I'll leave that to, if the committee wants to explore that any deeper in the form of a question. I had one more, and then we're going to go to those. Tell me, and again, I'm sure we covered this last year, remind me on line 27, I understand what we're doing with spouses. When we're changing the definition of firefighter to a person employed, and now we're saying appointed or regularly enrolled, what is the net effect of that? I mean, we may be including people that should have been included anyway, but can you just elaborate on that for the
lot of our firefighters across this state are not regular full-time or even employed. They're volunteers. So there's a lot of volunteer firefighters across the state, and that was an attempt to capture those individuals.
So that was a group that was left out by oversight when it was originally created, and we have the funds to extend that benefit to them.
That's right.
In them.
And I don't know if President Riley here. Oh, there she. Well, Haley's here. Haley Haley Corbett, who works for and represents, the Georgia Student Finance Commission, may want to present to that. That might be helpful if you would like.
Sure. Well, let me go to questions for you, and then Ms. Corbett will bring you up because you might be able to clear up if there's other questions from the community. Representative Clark, number one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On line 37, when you are defining line of duty, I noticed that for law enforcement officers or firefighters, it also includes them if they were to lose their life while off duty. And I'm just, I guess, a little curious about why only for the law enforcement or firefighter and not also for the volunteer firefighter or the prison guard? Why did we only allow for people who lost their life while they were off duty for just those two groups?
Okay, so on line, it speaks to law enforcement officers or firefighters on line 34 while on duty, and you're talking about line 37 or line 36 where it speaks to firefighters. So the assumption was that oftentimes firefighters would be availing themselves to an emergency from wherever they may be. To your point, that may be the case with law enforcement officers as well. I don't know, Legislative Council may be better able to address that if they need to, but I think that our goal was to make sure that anybody that might be regularly responding to these types of events was covered if indeed there was a loss of life, and firefighters oftentimes are doing that as part of their regular job, if you will.
Yeah, so I guess my follow-up to that would be exactly what you just said. So employed firefighter, if they were to lose their life while they were off duty and they ran into a burning building, even though they weren't on the clock, their children and spouse would be eligible for this. But a volunteer firefighter, as written, would not, unless I'm just reading this wrong, would the volunteer firefighter also, and maybe I'm just reading it wrong because we divided them up each different category. So I just want to make sure that all firefighters, if we're going to do it, I do think it should be any person.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that we might need, again, legislative council may could weigh in on that. When you read the language, perhaps we haven't captured something that we might need to capture. But I understand your concern, and I agree with you.
Thank you.
I don't know. May need a more legal read on the language, to be precise.
And Representative Clark, we'll get that. I mean, I see what you're capturing. I suspect it may be a bit between, if you're a volunteer, you're not on duty, or often you're a volunteer. I mean, in the days when I remember volunteer program, you were always off duty. I mean, because there was no time for you to go into the station. So I think that's the reason there's a distinction. But your question is that distinction creating a difference that we want to take them? And that's a valid question. And we're just hearing this for the first time today, and that'll give us something to do between seconds. Good question. Representative Glaze.
Thank you. I remember this bill from last year, and it was a good bill then, a good bill now. And I'd like to ask if there is an appetite, when there's time, to suggest a friendly amendment so that spouses would not be under the full-time requirement to receive these benefits and utilize them to advance their careers.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for the, I agree with that, by the way. And so my goal today was to get it heard again so that I can come back, learn from this committee, and bring back whatever changes in a new sub that might make it better. And assuming, the will of the committee is what it was last year. So this is all helpful to that end. Yep.
Thank you, Representative Glaze. Representative Jackson, Edson Jackson, number 23.
Just to add to what Representative Glaze was saying, I think we should add part-time students coming in, because some parents can only take 3 based on what school systems require, at least 1 credit hour, 5 hour, whatever they do in the system at this time. So I do think that this is very important, because this will encourage so many parents to go to school, and during the time when they can, whether it be in the morning, noon, or night.
Thank you, Representative.
Mm-hmm. Are there any further questions? Any further questions of the author? Ms. Corbett, you want to come and you can tell us a couple of things. One, I think he wanted you to address the issue with I'm having a moment here. The full-time versus part-time. I was trying to figure out part-time sermon. Is that something that the commission, you could work into making a definition for that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee. We certainly would welcome guidance from the General Assembly on that. So if that's the will of this committee and this body to allow part-time students and spouses to participate, if that can be worked out with Legislative Council, we can certainly implement that.
Did you have anything else, Chairman Petrie, you wanted to?
I think that was a helpful piece, and to make sure I understand, I think we're talking about part-time for adult spouses,
Yes.
rather than children of these individuals. So
Yes.
that's helpful.
Yeah, I think
to
we've
work
heard
out.
in this community before, many times in an adult education environment, life happens. It's hard to go to school from 10 to 2 or from
It is.
7 to 10. Quick part. Do we have any questions for Ms. Corbett before we, or is there a question for Ms. Corbett? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. You can have a seat. We'll call you back if you would.
Thanks, Dave.
Whip Park, you have a question for the author?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Peachtree, thank you for the bill. I know, our House voted unanimously to support this bill last year. I had a question on Section 4, which seems to be a new section from the bill. And this may be more of a legal question, but perhaps something just to get clarification on. The new language added here is spouse or, but, again, it's that question of, do we need to authorize their ability to, for purposes of children otherwise be included as well? As I'm, reading through and, looking through the bill for consistency purposes, we're, seeing spouse or child, whether or not there needs to be an addition there.
I think, Whip Park, I believe that this is referring to the person that was deceased. So if you were the surviving spouses, before you would be the parent of your kids, the firefighter or the police officer that had passed. So it said parent because you would be dealing with the children. The reason spouse was added was because the person that we're trying to take care of is the spouse of the person that lost their life. I think that's the reason. So it wouldn't be, it's going back up a generation, not down a generation.
And we changed it from from must to shall be the spouse or child. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leader.
Oh, you're going to get in
Mr.
trouble
Whip,
with
Mr. Whip.
the leader now.
Sorry.
Are there any further questions for the gentleman? Okay, well, Chairman Petrie, if you'll just work with, Lisbon Council to make sure we're covering everybody equally on lines are 30, I think 31 through 39, and then we'll work on some language. Do I get a sense of the committee that we would like to see the gentleman bring the proposition back allowing a spouse to be part-time? Is that the general sense that he would prepare?
That's what I'm hearing. Okay.
So that's what I'm hearing from
And I'll
you,
address
rather
the
than us to
volunteers.
try to amend your proposition when it comes back. So,
And
I
I'll
think
get
that's
the legislative council to make sure that we're all reading this correctly to understand full well the volunteer provision and make sure that we've got that. I think I understand what we want now. That's
Yes, sir.
good.
Yes,
And
sir.
we want it just right so it doesn't have to change anywhere
Yes, sir.
else. And so I'll do just that and I'll bring it back. Give me a little time, I'll bring it back just like we want it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you,
There's
Chairman.
nothing further. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
We're going to move on now to our next proposition, HB 172. Representative Huddleston. As you settle in there, Representative, I'm going to ask, we have the original bill here, HB 172 LC 461037.
That's correct, Chairman.
Okay, tell us about your proposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the members of the committee. This is a bill that I actually brought before y'all last session. It actually passed out of the House 166-1, went passed through Senate committee and rules, and made it to the floor out of rules on Sunny Day. It just kind of got trapped with time running out. So had very a positive approach as it was coming through. Basically, what this bill does is as I mentioned last year, we're in dire need of large animal food industry vets in Georgia. What this does is a tuition reimbursement program for large animal vets. Basically, it's an existing program, and the program basically right now is actually you can apply for a year, and there's 5 applicants available for $20,000. Basically, you'd have to reapply each year, and it goes up to a maximum of 83 years. So basically what this bill would do, of what we requested, is basically it would allow you to apply one time for 3 years, and we changed it. We had it last year as of $25,000 max per year per student or per applicant, and we've increased it to $30,000 for the 3 years, so actually applying only at one time. And so basically what this does is, we talk a lot about rural communities. There's a lot of veterinarians out there that practice small animal medicine, but like you said, we're in that dire need of large food animal vets. So basically, if you look at it was part of the requirements that you could serve in a county less than 30,000. But if you look at the rural development and communities of what we're looking at, basically that's 50,000 or less. So basically, if they can serve as a veterinarian, large animal in those rural counties, basically it equals 118 counties in this state that they can serve in. And I use basically as an example last year in the West Georgia area, we actually have 38 rough vets in the Carroll County area with no large animal. And so a lot of times us as cattlemen or large animal owners, sometimes it gets called upon us to be a vet to those individuals. So this would allow those vets, say a small animal in Carroll County, to serve in the north and the south of the counties because they less than 50,000. And by doing that, that allows them to be an applicant and earn, like I said, the tuition assistance program. They have to serve for at least 3 years. So you get to thinking that 3-year mark, you would get to thinking if somebody served in rural Georgia and was able to provide those services, probably in 3 years, they'll probably settle down into that community and let life begin. So I think that's a plus there, is allowing them to serve in those rules. So that, Mr. Chairman, that's pretty much kind of what we shared from last year that we'd like to bring forth again, and I'm open to any questions.
You have one, Leader Administration, number 28.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative, for bringing this bill. Just to key in on one of the points that you talked about, under the existing program now, an enrollee may have to reapply year to year. But if we pass your bill, there would be the ability to enter into a contract, and that the board could just request maybe certification that the participant continues to live in one of these counties that it would apply to. They don't have to restart the process, or I'm talking about the applicant, participant doesn't have to restart the process and have uncertainty about whether they're going to continue to be part of this program year to year. Is that right?
That is correct. Like I said, they have certification to where that proves that they've worked in those development areas for that 3-year period.
Excellent bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree. I think it's a great bill. Certainly appreciate the increase in the amount of the student loans as well. I think Leader Administration already touched upon the new language that was added to this bill on lines 48 to 51. Does that simply codify in terms of the ability, the permissive language of requiring annual certification? Does that just codify kind of an existing process, or does that in any way kind of weaken kind of this 3-year agreement?
I think pretty much there right now is basically you can apply for 1 year, and it's 1 year only, and you have to reapply each year. And that was one of the big concerns it was asked upon. So I think basically it would codify basically just having certification, knowing that they are serving in those areas, to utilize those dollars.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for bringing the bill. 2 questions. My colleague did say thanks for increasing the amount, but I'm curious, what is the typical amount that borrowers have asked for this, and why did we need to bring it up or increase it by $10,000 in this iteration of the bill?
Well, I know pretty much, like I said, with everything's gone up over time. And if you heard veterinary medicine, it's harder to become a vet than it is a medical doctor. I don't know the true dollars actually of that, but a lot of times you get to thinking if you're reimbursed that amount for like the $30,000, this allows those individuals when they're in those counties to get established, because it relieves them of that. They're actually working it all for that loan reimbursement, but it allows them to get established in those communities.
All right, thank you. And then the second question that I had was really just about the individuals that would be eligible for this program are people who are working in these rural areas as a veterinarian. Is that correct?
Yes, basically what it could be, they could actually be residents of one county, but be willing to serve in those counties of need, those 118 that's 50,000 or less, and be eligible for this.
And is there any limits or like a certain amount of hours that you need to provide veterinary care in these communities? So let's say they live in Atlanta and they drive out to a rural area a certain number of times per month to provide this large animal veterinary care. Is there
I know in the existing because it's an existing program. I do remember seeing basically to serve in those areas, it was like 20 hours per week. So I know that there is some existing hours, and I can follow up and double check on that, but I know there is a requirement to make sure that you are serving the large animal food industry.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Huddleston, I appreciate this bill. I've actually mirrored this to try to expand this to different type of veterinarians, as I am a scientist. So I appreciate this legislation. I did want to ask, I think Rep. Clark already addressed, did they have to live there and work there, or they can just, you answered that already, so I appreciate that.
That's correct. Yes.
So I want to ensure, how are we ensuring that they are working with large animals and not just going to get that vet degree and saying they're working with large animals?
I would think part of that certification process, like I said, that when they apply, they have to turn that certification in. There is some accountability to it. So I think, like you said, because it goes before the board, Student Finance Commission, that they would have to submit some type of documentation that they are doing large animal practice.
All right, I appreciate this bill. I hope we can expand this to more vets. Thanks.
Thank you for your support.
Does the committee have any further questions of the author? Yes, sir. Chairman Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for bringing this bill. I just want to follow up on those two questions, and they're great questions, but I think the board or the committee that selects these participants for the scholarship are very stringent in who they choose, and make sure those candidates are committed to going into the areas where large animals are needed. We have a huge vacancy there and void in those type of veterinarians in our state. So I feel very confident, although it's not spelled out in the bill, that their regulations, as the author said, would assure that it's adequate participation in rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Dickey. Will this help the peach industry in Georgia? It will not help the peach industry in Georgia.
But it would help a lot more.
Yes, sir. Any further questions of the gentleman? I failed to ask earlier, but I evidently was lucky and nobody had signed up to speak to the first bill. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to give some information to us? I also failed earlier in the day, and I'll get to the question. If anybody wishes to speak to a bill, I want you to feel like we'll try to handle it with sign-ups, but if you want to, something happens during there, feel free to come up. We're going to ask you if you will stand for questions, but I want to make it clear you can come and speak your mind on a bill for or against or in the middle, and you do not have to take questions. We don't want to chill the public process of being involved. So I'll usually say that at the beginning of every meeting, and I'd failed to do it today. So if anyone wishes to speak, let us know. We don't have anybody signed up. We're going to go back for round two to Representative Barnes.
One more. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does this apply to mobile vets?
Well, I think pretty much you get to thinking, a lot of times mobile vets has a home base. But you get to thinking, if you serve in those rural communities, I think that the door's open to basically be that mobile vet. And it goes back, I can give you an example. There's a young gentleman from our county that actually went to UGA, become a vet. He moved down to Thomasville and started into a practice. But basically down there within the dairy organization, he actually has that home base, but he is a mobile vet working those different farms. And so it goes back to that 3 years. I asked his dad, when we're in dire need of that large animal vet, I asked him, I said, do you think your son would ever move back to the West Georgia area? He said he'll never come back. Said he's done met a young lady and said life has begun.
Well,
so that's kind of what we're looking at, is getting that established. So thank you for your comment.
Look at that. We're helping everybody to do that. As a practical matter, Representative, I haven't seen a SUV that has come along where you can throw a 1,000-pound steer in the back and take it down to the local veterinarian. So they have to be pretty mobile. But no, that's a great question. Representative Clark, do you okay, I have no further questions. I think we have a good proposition here. We'll hold it over, as we mentioned, we'll have you back up. Assuming there's no problems or anything that you want to continue to work on, we'll work on getting you back up here and getting this moving along next week.
Thanks.
So with that concludes our agenda. Is there anything for the good of the order? Any of the committee members have anything? If not, that concludes our agenda. I thank everyone for their time and participation. We'll stand adjourned without objection, and without objection, we are adjourned.